welcome back.
Thank you. Thank you.
Well, this is Reiko, and thank you for watching Channel Zero. And today, again, I want to introduce you Dr. Robert Eldridge, who is involving with lots of government research between Japan and America. And so, Dr. Eldridge, and today I want to talk about the Nihonbyo. Byo means disease,
Yes.
Japanese disease. It doesn't mean that all the Japanese are diseased, but that I named Nihonbyo to certain type of Japanese people, not only Japanese, but certain type of people in the world today. And the Nihonbyo's Japanese disease definition is that there are very serious problems. We need to focus. We need to do something right now. But and we are all notice that. But we don't want to really get into it, and we just slightly look away from the real point and real problem, and then pretend that as if it doesn't really exist, you know. And then and Japanese people are intelligent, but when they become mass, and when they become too much caring about each other, and then and when they are really worrying about what will happen, or what will happen to me if I say that, or if I dig into this problem, what awful will come out. Let's not talk about that. Let's not touch that. And then they don't have courage to really discuss or talk or do something about real problem which we need to focus right now. Therefore, the problem getting worse and worse and worse, and now it's really becoming a big issue. But still, many people in Japan are ignoring, you know, try not to look at it and pretend that they are happy and they are doing okay and their nice lifestyle will, you know, go on, will carry on, and there is no real problem. And that's Nihonbyo. That's Japanese disease. And it's not, this phenomenon is not actually in Japan. It's in all over the world right now. So American can be Nihonbyo, Japanese disease, or other non-Japanese people can be Nihonbyo as well. But what do you think about some American people who is Nihonbyo at this moment, and also what is the real issue? What is the real problem happening in America that all the American, right or left, doesn't matter, all the Americans have to seriously look at it right now?
Well, let's see, I don't live in the United States, so I'm not there on a daily basis to really get the pulse of my fellow countrymen. But last year I went back to the United States twice, and I had some quality time traveling around the country, meeting with a lot of people of all walks of life and all political views and whatnot. When I heard President Trump's inauguration speech, I had a bunch of different concerns. One, that it read less as an inauguration speech and more as a political campaign speech. The other concern I had, and it's related to that, is that it only superficially addressed the issues, I think. And it also didn't address...
You mean shallow, very shallow.
Very shallow, yeah. And it also, to me, didn't address what some of the real issues are. And so, on a shallow basis, you know, talking about struggling families and things like that, but how are they struggling? He doesn't... I don't believe he truly understands.
Because he's rich?
He's well, rich and removed from things, and in a completely different seat, not as a worker, but as a as essentially a CEO. The other thing that I'm concerned about is that if he doesn't truly understand the issues, the divide that existed during the election would continue to grow and grow. And one of the things I'm most concerned about is the income disparity in America, which continues to grow and grow. The wealthiest few people control a disgusting amount of the wealth in the country. So essentially,
how many times difference?
Well, it's something in the neighborhood of 0.1% of the people control in the neighborhood of 90% of the wealth.
Oh my God.
Okay, the
It's
average
like communism.
it essentially could be like that, or oligarchy. Another issue is that on an average basis, the average worker's yearly income is 1/475th of a CEO. So in other words, the CEO makes 475 times more than the average worker. And that disparity has grown and grown over the years.
That's a serious issue in America, right?
Very serious.
But no one really look at it.
Well, there were candidates that look at it. Mr. Sanders, for example, and the establishment candidate, Mrs. Clinton, essentially crushed Bernie Sanders' campaign and made it difficult to really talk about that issue. And so that's a form of American Nihonbyo. So,
American versions of Nihonbyo, Japanese disease, yes, okay.
So without addressing those issues, I'm very concerned. Another related issue is institutional racism that exists.
Racism.
Right. So in other words, systematically discriminating against minority groups or others. The result of that is that you have an increasingly embittered, angry minority population. So particularly African Americans, for example, the percentages of African Americans who go to jail, serve time, compared to white Americans. And that's not to say that it's because they commit more crimes. The same crimes for a black person versus a white person quite often ends in different punishments, different forms of punishment.
I didn't know that.
And then a significant portion of black Americans, particularly male black Americans, are in jail when really they should be afforded the opportunity to go to college. And as you know, college expenses are now astronomical.
Yes, yes.
So again, Mr. Sanders called for free tuition for public universities, and the costs were not insignificant, but not large either. And unfortunately, that was derailed as well. Although some states are going to be adopting that or trying to adopt it.
Okay, all right. Well, I didn't know so much about the races between white or minority or whatever, but okay. So if you talk about that, on the other hand, I can understand some white people's fear as well, because I know many American friends. I have many American friends, and they are almost white people, but actually, they. I should choose the words. It's a very, very delicate issue, so I should.
Well, no, I'm not talking about social racism. I'm talking about systemic.
Okay, systemic. That's right.
So when the systems are working against minority groups, either through omission
Right.
or commission. So in
Right.
other words, they were forgotten or there were targeted programs against them.
Right.
Just to give an example, school systems,
Right.
particularly inner cities, aren't getting the attention and the money that's required. In the city of Detroit, Michigan, for example, which was the heart of the American industry, is essentially,
Right.
it's been gutted. I heard a speech by a young high school girl yesterday from Detroit, and she was talking about how there are 4,000 high school age youth in her community. There's one school within 15 square miles for those 4,000 teenagers, one school. Whereas if you go into the suburbs outside of the city, there are about 7 or 8 schools in the same radius
Right.
for 2,000 students. And so there's a lot of inequality that exists. Socially, I would argue that with the exception of a few cases, most Americans are in a, I would almost say, in a post-racism era. But obviously that's not true, but compared to when I was young, a youth,
Right.
the advancements in interracial relationships and friendships and working together and all that, it's completely different. And but there are still problems, but the real problems are when it's done through institutions and rules and regulations and policies that make it hard for their situation to be changed by themselves.
Okay.
And they lose hope and they have a lot of despair. A country that has no hope among its people really has no future.
Yes.
And that's what this election was about. That
Same
people
thing
were,
happening in Japanese young people.
and people were willing to bet on an unknown rather than staying with a known quantity.
Right.
That was Mrs. Clinton.
I see. Okay. All right. Thank you very much. And then let's review what you said. So the real problem, what's going on in America, that all the Americans should focus, is the differences between rich and normal people, and also the racial issue, the social system of racial, not system, but social racial issues.
Yeah, I would say that maybe the socio-economic results of institutional racism.
All right. Okay. And one more thing I would say that all the Americans now should care about is food problem, and then poverty. Yes, and then I should talk about economic now. I mean, well, it's not only in America, but for example, in America, even if you have good job, but if you have serious disease and then or illness, and if you want to get the good treatment, you have to pay a fortune for that.
Correct.
Not like Japan. So and some people can afford it, but many people cannot. And this is also a very big issue. All the Americans have to do something about right now because it's connected to life. And also, I heard that from American people that there is no water in a Midwest area in America, because water is all taken away now. And so down Mississippi or upper east or west side is all right, or Mount Rocky side is all right, but the middle area in America, huge, Colorado or Wyoming,
the plains,
Nebraska,
the Great Plains,
yes,
yeah.
and that's all drying up right now. Is that right?
I've heard that from you, but I haven't. I'm not from that area. I'm not familiar with that.
Okay, but if that is the case, and then even in America, serious hunger or poverty may come within 1 to 2 years, I think, because if there is not enough water and we can't harvest things, right? And then at the end, many poor people cannot even afford to buy food, and so could you please tell me about? You say now the problem is the difference between rich and normal people's salary.
Right.
And how much is the average people's salary in America right now?
Well, it depends, but one statistic I heard was that 50% of American children now technically live in poverty, and 50% of families, households, make $30,000 or less
A month.
a year.
A year! Oh my God!
Okay. So $30,000 for 1 year for a family. $30,000 represents 1/10 of a 1-hour speech that Mrs. Clinton gave to Goldman Sachs. They paid her for 1 hour or so, $275,000. And so when a family's struggling on a fraction of that for a whole year, it's almost as if you'd read it in a novel from 19th century Britain. How just the poor, how the poor are, and that's considered our middle class now. It just shows how poor things are becoming. So whether it's the economic issues, whether it's the issue of racism and whatnot, that's unsustainable. And then, as you mentioned, food security or food issues, in other words, environmental issues, ignoring the environmental challenges is also unsustainable. And one thing that's worrisome about the Trump administration and his cabinet picks is that many of them are climate change deniers, and they tend to be anti-scientific, anti-intellectual, and so as a result, it's more ideology that's driving some people than science.
I see. Okay. Well, it seems like there are lots of serious problems in America to worry about. Okay. And next, we want to talk about how Mr. Trump can, deal with this kind of urgent problem issue, which we need to do something about right now.